Hey guys, Drifter here, welcome to Fortnite In Depth. In today's episode, I want to take a second look at the Suppressed submachine gun because I think it's kind of super strong now. This used to be the, empirically speaking, worst weapon in all of Fortnite, but after a series of buffs, it's gotten shockingly strong, and this episode is not going where I ever would have expected it to, because I was so pent up about the Suppressed submachine gun being bad that I didn't try it out for the first series of buffs, so now that I'm here on the second series of buffs, I'm kind of getting blown away. Before we move too much further into the video, I would like to ask you to drop a like on this video right now. I'm not normally that type of YouTuber that begs for things. Usually I go the entire video without saying that or near the end. However, I'm working on another scientific video about the YouTube algorithm, especially when it comes to Fortnite. So as an experiment, I would appreciate it that those of you that have watched for a long time just go ahead and drop a random like. Basically, I'm going to compare and contrast to a normal video and pull some math and stuff like that. So now let's go ahead and move along with the in-depth episode. The Suppressed submachine gun used to truly be the worst weapon in the game, just empirically, mathematically speaking, but it's undergone a series of buffs, and now it's quite possibly one of the best, if not borderline OP, which is why I wrote super strong. The first buff that it got was a very significant damage increase of over 25% from its base damage. It'll now deal 5 more damage per shot across the board. That counts from the gray to the green to the blue. They're all going to deal 5 more damage per shot, which makes it a much more competitive weapon. What that means for you in game is that the gray one will deal 22 damage per shot, the green suppressed SMG 23 per shot, and the blue one will deal a surprisingly high 24 damage per shot. In this section, one of the things that I find to be incredibly useful is a damage comparison. Comparatively, the tactical submachine guns will deal 20 damage per shot, blue is going to do a little bit better right there at 23, and a gray burst will deal 27. So in terms of damage, this is just somewhere between a tac SMG and a gray burst, but that's overall surprisingly high and much higher than it used to be, which used to basically just be garbage. Headshots are double, so in the case of this weapon, the gray one will deal 44 damage to the head, green one 46 to the head, and the blue one will deal 48 damage to the head, which is getting right there close to a critical shots to kill number, and if they've taken some damage, it will make a significant difference. The damage drop-off ranges are moderately steep, and you can deal as little as 13 damage. It's maybe not as strong as some of the pistols or shotguns. It used to be very, very long range, but that's been nerfed twice in a row. At this point, anything outside of 50 meters, and definitely at 100, you're going to be going down toward that 13 damage land. You're going to be dealing very, very little damage, so do keep in mind that even though there's a lot of good things about the gun now and the damage is high, long range really just isn't where the Suppressed submachine gun is at. However, I will say that the damage fall off is negligible for ranges that you should be using this gun, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but it's clearly not a super long range gun. If you stay up close and if you stay in medium range, it's still going to be dealing its maximum damage and it's not going to be a big factor in your gameplay. Just so long as you don't go for these across map like mountain headshot, like pick things with the Suppressed submachine gun, you probably won't notice the damage fall off. Let's go ahead and load up our no skin brown pants warrior here and take a look at the shots to kill on the Suppressed submachine gun. This is going to count for all of them. It's going to be 3 headshots if you run into a person early game that has no shield, or 5 body shots. That's a little bit on the high side, but this isn't like the super high damage gun. If they have picked up a 50 pot or maybe 2 minis, it's going to be 4 headshots to kill or 7 body shots. The 4 headshots isn't bad at all at this stage, but the body shots are starting to add up as we continue. The 5 headshot kill or 9 body shot kill will happen if they have 200 health or 100 shield on top of their health, and this is where the Suppressed submachine gun gets not so great. 5 headshots in a row is a little bit unlikely. 9 body shots in a row is doable if you're fairly accurate, but most of us are going to miss some shots from our magazine, so it won't kill a person like this very effectively with 1 mag, though it is suppressed, so you can sneak up on them. As you can see, it's excellent early game, excellent mid game, and it starts to fall off a little bit late game, but is still very, very functional. Let's move on to something that's much more curious about this weapon. In some ways, it's actually better than the Gold Scar, and we're going to start with the rate of fire. The Suppressed submachine gun rate of fire is 540 rounds per minute, which is quite high for this game overall. That's going to be faster than the light machine guns or any of the fully automatic rifles, including the Scars. And the Suppressed submachine gun fires at the exact same rate as the new drum gun. A lot of people like to think of the drum gun as a bullet hose or a spray weapon. Well, the Suppressed submachine gun shoots just just as fast, and the tac submachine gun will shoot a little bit faster than both of them. So when we're looking at overall DPS, or damage per second, which is your most important number with these kind of weapons, the gray one will deal 198, the green one will deal 207, and the blue suppressed submachine gun, as rare as it may be, will deal 216 damage, which is shockingly high. Out of context, that probably doesn't make any sense, but let's do a little bit of DPS comparisons. The damage per second on the gold scar is only 198. A blue suppressed submachine gun is 216, and a purple tac is a little bit better at 260. To put this in perspective, a gray suppressed submachine gun has the same damage per second as a gold scar. They're basically tied. Now, the scar may have a scarier noise, and it may have a better bloom if you're crouched and better range, but you could probably spray somebody down with a gray suppressed submachine gun than you could with a gold scar if you were up close, which is a very scary thing to think about, that such a low tier gray weapon can deal that level of damage. Speaking of damage, let's talk about how effective it is at busting bases. The suppressed SMG will deal 20 to 22 damage to structures depending on your rarity. The damage to structures does not fall off over range, so this will be pretty much at any range, and that's slightly better than average structure DPS. That's going to be more comparative to the drum gun. It's going to be similar to assault rifles, even though it's going to deal less damage per shot. The rate of fire is going to make up for it. The problem with this, though, is that it doesn't have a very big magazine, and it's not very ammo efficient. You can break bases with it, but you're going to be dumping almost one mag in per piece of wood, and then you're just going to be reloading while people run away and build more, so it's not very effective at that. Tiers have minor changes on your bloom, your recoil, your reset time, and reload time, and of course damage, which we've already talked about. This tile is pretty much true for every single weapon in the game. So next we're going to focus on reload. The gray one will reload in 2.2 seconds, green is 2.1, and blue is 2 seconds flat. All of these reload fairly quickly. However, given the nature of you being close to your enemies with these weapons, it's going to feel a lot longer. My recommendation is that you be a little bit more conservative with your bullets and don't spray unless they're super close. So far in the episode, you've seen that the suppressed submachine gun is very competitive when it comes to damage and DPS, but let's talk about two more intangible assets that make it such a powerful weapon, perhaps the most powerful weapon, depending on some people's opinion. It is a suppressed weapon, which in the case of Fortnite means that it's going to make very little noise, and there will be no visible bullets or no hit scan tracers, so that if you're shooting at somebody very far away, number one, they won't hear you, and number two, they won't be able to see the direction that your bullets are coming from, which makes it much harder for them to build their walls in the proper direction to fight back and to be sort of a competent enemy. Now, as you get closer to enemies, they're more likely to hear the little wet fart noises that the suppressor makes, and they'll probably have a better idea of where they're being hit from. However, I have found with both this and the suppressed pistol, if you're close enough to them, you could dump 4, 5, 6, 7 shots into an enemy before they're able to react properly. Just because it's suppressed, it really throws them off. Most people rely on the audio indicators and not the visual ones. So that's a very good intangible asset to have. The suppressed submachine gun can use first shot's accuracy, unlike most of the other submachine guns, which is a very big benefit. Since you're suppressed, you can be patient, shoot your one shot, let it reset, and shoot it again while they try to figure out where you're coming from. This first shot's accuracy also resets very fast, perhaps faster than any of the other weapons, and with good timing, you can run this almost like a semi-automatic rifle. You can shoot first shot's accuracy quicker than just about anything else, which is nice, but not as nice as our last fact today. The last fact is that the suppressed submachine gun bloom is very tight and similar to the tactical SMG. It used to have a slightly larger, more awkward bloom that was just big enough to cause me to miss a lot and be very frustrating. However, that's been updated to where the bloom is quite tight, and the most important thing about it is the maximum spread on the bloom is better than rifles or better than most other weapons. And by maximum spread, I mean if you're jumping, if you're running, if you're sidestepping, if you're not aimed down sights, that maximum width is very workable and much smaller than most of the rifles. So in my opinion, the suppressed submachine gun is much better than a rifle if you're the kind of player that likes to strafe and shoot. I'm definitely in that boat. I've just been playing shooters for years, so the idea of standing perfectly still and crouching just really scares me because I feel like a big target. If I'm gonna shoot, if I'm gonna do something like that, I like to be strafing while I shoot, and the penalty for strafing while shooting is almost negligible on the suppressed submachine gun, so it can be very effective like that. Speaking of effective, the suppressed submachine gun is going to be best used in medium range combat or close range combat. Because of the damage drop off, it struggles a bit at long ranges. You can still use it at long ranges to harass people and get some suppressed shots in, but because the damage per shot is so low, I truly wouldn't recommend it. And maybe more than close range, medium is where this gun is nasty. Just outside of shotgun range, where you can strafe back and forth, where they're not going to be able to hit you quite as well with rifles or anything, it is a super monster weapon. The suppressed submachine gun is also bad for base peeking fights and for base busting. If you're going for peek shots, really your first 1 or 2 shots is all that matters, and in that instance, having a sniper rifle or a hunting rifle or even a regular rifle or burst rifle is going to be much better for you, because the damage per shot and the headshot damage per shot are going to be much higher than using the suppressed submachine gun. Similarly, it doesn't quite have the sustained firepower to base bust very well. You can do it with a pickaxe if you wanted to, but that just doesn't make it a good idea. I will say that it's also not as good up super close as a drum gun or attack SMG or even a shotgun. It makes total sense that those will outperform the suppressed SMG, but I do think the suppressed SMG is going to outperform most rifles in close quarter spam combat, just because if somebody rushed me and I hit him with a shotgun and I wanted to swap to something full auto to finish him off, I could swap over to my SCAR, but to keep the accuracy proper, I would have to crouch and sit very still and shoot at them. However, if I had a suppressed submachine gun, I could pop them with the shotgun, swap over to the suppressed submachine gun, and continue to strafe, jump, duck, move, do whatever I needed to do mobility-wise to not get shot, and there would be almost no accuracy penalty, and I could continue to spam them down, and that's really the strength of this weapon. As of right now, I would say the suppressed submachine gun is super strong and a fair rifle alternative. If you don't want to carry a rifle in this game, you shouldn't have to, and the suppressed submachine gun is not a bad idea to pick up instead of a rifle, especially if it's a blue one. Oh my god, the blue ones are pretty filthy. They hit that critical point where the damage starts getting scary for the enemies. Now, they won't have the same range for super long range combat, but for anything else, very effective. And I think you've seen a lot of streamers and pro players and YouTubers gravitate toward this, and you may see this more in my kit as well. There's actually a lot of rifle and shotgun alternatives. So many alternative weapons coming out of Epic Games right now. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something useful. If you did, please like the video, because I'm trying to do that, study on the YouTube algorithm. Otherwise, subscribe or leave a comment on what you think. Drifter out.